Dark, starring John and Danny.
Hey guys, welcome to Grim After Dark, Frontline Gaming Network's Tuesday night show. I am John, joined as always by my co-host and television entombed, Danny. Oh, that means
Thanks,
that
John.
was like a literal in space. I really like that. Before we start, I want to give a quick apology to Shelby, host of Signals from some kind of bizarre Hawaiian shirt off. I did have several lined up. However, all of them had a style of green that was very similar to this green behind me. And as much as I wanted to have little tiny parts of my body missing, we're going to try that next week. But if you have noticed, we have a headband on today in celebration of tonight's very special guest. You can argue that he's arguably our guest. We're going to have John Lennon on later in the show, which we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, super stoked.
But before we do that, Danny, let's go around the Warhammer community so that we can kind of see how the week has been so you guys can avoid some of the worst parts of the internet.
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah, and first of all, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, well, I was going to say, like, we have to be nice to Shelby because not only is she trying to compete with your questionable fashion choices, but also she has to share a show with Seth, and God knows how hard that is.
Well, it's just when you're the talented one, you got to shoot for other shows. So I totally get that one there.
Sure.
I will be back with more non-monochromatic shirts later, but today we're just gonna have to deal with the we're gonna deal with the headband today. But that's okay. It doesn't suit me as well as it suits Mr. Lennon, but we'll get to that later. The main thing kind of I noticed this week on Daka, and I went there. My computer had to be defragged afterwards, but I went there. Was the notice of Jervis Johnson retiring, which was a little shocking.
It's sort of a bummer. I mean, he's been like total honesty. Love the guy. He's been a huge part of the hobby ever since I've been in it for 20 plus years. But like his opinions are interesting and a little groggy for me. But otherwise, totally a good guy.
Don't worry. Yeah, and I think that marks the last of sort of the old guard of GW, moving on to pastures new. We're entirely into the GW rules team era and the less of the personality thing, which we'll see how that goes. Hey, what time is it? That's what I call this next part. There's a new orc range coming. A lot of new orcs. Well, it's like the word "what" for like what time is it? But I used the word "wah" for what time is it? And lots of wahs in the chat, so I feel really vindicated for using that pun. The smoothest squigs you've ever seen, the biggest war bosses, Gargant heads. It is like someone like they spend their whole pre-battle kind of polishing and buffing up that squig just so it's as smooth as my brain during last Saturday's tournament. But why don't you tell us kind of some of the reaction there to the wonderful new orc range?
Oh, sure. Yeah, here, I've got one right here. This one,
I got it right here for you.
No, I got it. I've got it up. So this one's pretty good, and I think it's really pertinent to this. It's I have to say I absolutely love the Tesseract glow paint. It's so easy to do layers. Currently using it to make an irradiated glowing poxwalker. I'd love to see an entire selection of the rainbow that works like this technical paint. It would be perfect for power swords and plasma guns. So naturally, the orc reaction was to complement Tesseract glow paint.
Yeah. And then I think the most of the issues that we're seeing from this is the Beast Snagga box, a box that is so rare and so hyped that it's going to be like a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory situation to the ones who finally and do are able to get it. What have you been seeing about kind of the reaction to our 4 per store quantity on something we're spending 2 weeks hyping up on Warhammer Community with a 1-hour preview?
Well, I mean, assuming that Games Workshop has a heavy supply of these, I think that's probably not the end of the world. But a little bit bummer for the local stores. I'm sure they could sell a lot more than 4 boxes of these.
For sure.
But that's okay. Well, I mean, it's sad. I wish that we were able to get more of
It's
these
pretty.
into the stores and into people's hands indirectly than directly. But we'll see. I'm going to try and get mine on Games Workshop this weekend. That's my plan.
Yeah, got to.
Try that new queue system, right?
You know, it actually works pretty well. I got a pretty good experience with that.
Nice.
But we have someone looking for audiobooks with a lot of chaos. Any suggestions? It's going to you, that one.
An audiobook with chaos?
Yeah, very specifically an audiobook with chaos. Not limited to full.
You could always listen to some of the Night Lords trilogy. I think that they have audiobooks for those right now, but those are pretty good.
Those are pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. And the last thing we're going to talk about here before we bring on John Lennon, who we've been kept waiting in a silent room for so very long. This is the pre-order week for Book of Fire, the latest kind of campaign book coming out. Check out the Mob Rules YouTube channel for a detailed video review of each of the armies available in that book. But yeah, lots of salt kind of coming up. Summarize the Book of Fire.
I think that the army choices are very fluffy and flavorful for the game, and I think that they're a lot of fun to imagine an army built in that kind of a context. I think, honestly, honest opinion, like the Skitarii one adds some stuff to a list that's already really good. Like it definitely adds some really nice abilities. Like the restrictions though are pretty light, so if you can fit it into your army, that's great. And if you have the spare points for the Skitarii, I think that's worth it. It might be worth it to not focus so much on the veteran Skitarii in that book. The Bellicor rule set is pretty rad. I'm pretty excited about seeing that. Hopefully it becomes, well, I mean, obviously the intention is that the list is legal, right? But there's some legality problems with actually building it. Yeah. So there's that. And Order of Our Martyred Lady is there. They're there. Yep.
And then for more details about the Chaos Space Marine section of Book of Fire, if you look to last June, where the Mob Rules channel did a review of Faith and Fury, literally nothing has changed in that part of the book at all. So it's just your best place to get those rules. The Book of Fire sounds like a Harry Potter title. That's absolutely fair. I would read that book. It's quite good. But overall, a good book that makes good things great. And then Bellicor illegal to play in his own detachment. Anything else you want to add in there, Danny?
No, the fluff is really cool. I like the campaign book that's coming out too. I really like the mission that they previewed about the what is it, the Flabbergs or Fatbergs?
Oh, Fatberg, yeah. The very special Nurgle ice is just fat, which I think the smell already is just terrible in that. I do not. Yeah. I don't want that campaign book. You can take that.
I mean, you had to sit next to me all Saturday, so like I know you know exactly what it's like. So
that's fair, Danny. Literal mission terrain, player placed as well. So that's good.
It's true. I've very placed.
So Danny, why don't you, because I know you prepared an introduction for this year, and I'm not just throwing this on you last minute.
No.
Why don't you introduce our guest?
Okay. So we have with us tonight a man who needs no introduction, but probably we could add a little one here. John Lennon is joining us tonight. You know him. You probably hate him for no reason because he's an awesome guy. You should totally like him. He's probably stolen some wins if you've been to some majors in the Southeast from you. But yeah, we're super happy to have him. Perennial Imperium player, but also technically a Tyranid player. I don't know. We'll see what he has to say about his faction jumping ways when we have him on. John, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. I want to start off by something I'm super interested in, by the fact I keep leaning forward and ruin kind of the angle in the shot. But so you're a fairly well-known 40K player. You've won a lot of majors, GTs. You help run the Art of War coaching service. You have all these other hats on. When you roll up to a table, round one at a tournament, and people recognize you and know that you're going to play you, how awful is that reaction sometimes from those players?
It is the worst.
Like, how do you counteract that? Because they've just looked at BCP and they're like, Like, how do you go up to that table and try and actually get like a good game on that, without with them having like psyched themselves up before it even began?
So I don't know how to answer this without sounding like I have a massive ego, which I do. I just don't want to sound like it. Um, but I really just oh man. Okay. So I mean sometimes people kind of start off the game by saying like, "Oh, I know I'm going to lose this games, but like and I'm just like, "Oh no, let's just like play a game. Like I lose games all the time. Like let's just have some fun, try your best, do the stuff. We'll talk through the game." Usually I just try to, like have conversations with them, get to know the guy. And just talk to them about their army. Like, hey, how long have you been playing this faction? Where are you from? You travel to tournaments much? Just get a conversation going. Talk to them about the game. Just be open, be friendly, and see what I can do from there.
So your answer then is to lie and placate them. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Could lose at least one game in the past. I mean, I think I've lost at least one tournament game. I don't know about two, but at least one tournament game every 24 months. So maybe it'll be them, right? It's their lucky day.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
No. I you try to be humble. It's always weird to be recognized because I've been playing for a while, a very long time, and this is a relatively recent phenomenon. I'm used to people being like, "Oh, I'm paired with a kid. I'm going to stomp him." I'm like, "Oh crap." So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, and of course the real benefit is the like after you stomp them round one is the 10% discount in Art of War coaching coupon that you give them afterwards there. Which is like the real prize from that tournament. Speaking of which, like how did that come about? Like the whole idea to start a service for like or coaching or to be a coach for other people for 40K.
So, being honest, I am not the innovator here. I'm just an early adopter. I was living down in Tampa before Art of War really came together, and Nick and Richard and Mark all started putting this thing together. Of course, Nick has been doing coaching ever since he figured out he can make $1 on a list. But after COVID happened, I was working from home, and I was like, well, if I'm working from home in Tampa, I might as well work from home in Tallahassee and still actually play Warhammer. And I was just kind of at a good point in my life to up and move. I was, single, working from home. Didn't have any reason to live in Tampa anymore because all of my, my high school friends had moved out. So I figured out it was time. So I moved to Tallahassee, started doing this instead, and then eventually kind of phased out the working from home day job and made this the day job.
Awesome.
How terrifying was that to you to do it, to go from
I got to tell you, you don't do it when you're already in a good situation. So it was terrifying, but I can afford to pay rent for at least a couple of months. So I might as well move up there. And worst case scenario, if in a couple of months I can't pay rent anymore, we're moving back to Tampa. So it was a little weird because obviously you don't think of this as like an actual job. Most people don't. At least I didn't think of this as a job until it kind of fell in my lap. So people are always like, "Oh, your job's awesome." I'm like, I got really lucky. Like life came at me and I rolled a boxcar. Don't know what to say.
Nice.
So there's going to be times. So like as a professional 40K player, coach, all that other kind of things. I know was an amateur kind of 40K talker. There's times when, man, you just want nothing to do with 40K. Like, you're sitting there looking at the email and you're just like, I don't really want to talk about this right now. Just to kind of keep that level of enthusiasm going.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years of retail back when I was, finishing up undergrad, really helped me put the fake face on. Like when someone walks onto the sales deck and you have to pretend that you're happy to see them. It's a lot easier with Warhammer to pretend that you want to talk about Warhammer. I acknowledge I do not always. Usually like whenever I'm doing client work, I always tell clients up front, like, hey, if you message me and it's not between 8 and 5 p.m., I'm not going to respond immediately, but I'll respond within 24 hours. Because sometimes, people message me at 11 p.m., when I'm on a date with my girlfriend. And I just don't want to talk about AdMech right now. But you just put that out up front and, you tell them like, hey, you're definitely going to get a response in 24 hours. And sometimes I'll respond directly to people like, hey, it's 10 p.m. on a Sunday. I'm going to tell you an answer on Monday. which is weird. But I honestly, I definitely have like an addictive personality, so I do like talking 40K a lot. So I don't actually burn out on it very much. I usually will talk 40K if I'm not actively doing something else. Like
Sure.
at this point, the default setting is talk 40K. So if I'm not, actively busy, yeah, screw it. Let's talk, how we beat Adamek. Which,
Yeah. So like, yeah. On that note, how do you sort of like deal with things like that? Because you're seeing like a lot of super powerful, strong armies. It don't necessarily have to like 100% rely on player skill. Where you have something like AdMech a few years ago with the Iron Hands, where you could kind of give a few simple instructions, and a lot of people could run that to a really good finish. So, what do you do to kind of to help your clients get to where they need to be in this sort of meta, where we seem to be having like a almost like Buffy style monster of the month club in the 40K army ways?
Yeah, this definitely does not make my job any easier, if I'm being real with you. However, what I always do is I try to put as much emphasis on the player as possible. That's just one of the ways that I try to teach people is because if you give someone like a really good list, that can be great for right now. But if you just hand someone a list that you wrote for them and tell them how to play it, they may not really get much better as a player long term. So in a month, they're just going to need a new list and so on and so on. So I always try to, explain like, all right, this is why this army that's dominant this month, the last codex that came out, whatever it may be, this is why they're good. This is how they win games. And I try to help people with the actual play style, like what you do against it. So, that AdMech is going to have a lot of guns, play the mission fairly well, have some fast mobile units. So, I teach people like, okay, well, focus on simplifying the army.
Okay, so you emphasize the player skill for like for these new players that are up and coming, with armies that don't necessarily like have like a super, like that they don't necessarily have like a great game plan into. Like obviously the list is when you give somebody a powerful list, like that's not gonna instantaneously turn them into a great player, right?
No, not.
So when you when you have when you end up in a situation like AdMech and you emphasize like these fundamentals, what kinds of things do you like other than like an increase in player skill? Like what kind of methods do you use to kind of teach those like improvements to player skill?
Yeah, so
Like,
I
do
mean,
you give them
methods I use.
examples or yeah? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Methods I use is usually a lot of examples, setting up like, describing scenarios and then kind of trying to explain, why you would do something in X scenario so that people, know what to do. Like if I tell someone like, hey, if your intercessors get shot by, 10 last chickens, they're going to die. Hopefully by explaining that to them and explaining basic math, they then don't have to have me tell them that also 10 guardsmen will die to 20 rangers. Like, you teach them not the specific example, but the reason behind it so that they can apply it to all different situations, because that usually lasts
Right.
longer than just telling someone a specific example. And obviously in coaching, it's a lot more complicated than that, but a very basic example just to kind of get the point across. Honestly, though, at the end of the day, it's always about, not always, but it's almost always about the player versus the player. So, I think, someone playing AdMech for the first time, AdMech is a great army. They aren't necessarily going to be, a veteran with an army they've been repping for years. I would bet on someone who's been playing the army for years and knows it inside out rather than a new player playing AdMech for the first time. And so I try to teach people, the fundamentals of the game, put a real emphasis on playing the mission in spite of what the opponent's doing, where you can score secondaries regardless of interacting with the opponent, where against AdMech, they're not going to be fun to play against, but they're not going to give you any easy points. They don't give up any easy secondaries. Right. It's hard to get assassinated off them. They usually don't throw vehicles in your face. So, teach people to, make a game plan that involves getting points without relying on the opponent giving them something. And then teach them how to deny points where, against AdMech, they're doing great, but, look at their secondaries, what they're doing, see if you can deny their points for a couple of turns here, deny their primary there. And it doesn't matter if you get tabled. If you can win by a few points, that's enough. And then as you get reps into an army, it gets even easier and easier to try and face them.
That's fair. Yeah. And I think as long as you can keep pushing kind of like that advantage against that kind of an army, I think that you can do a lot better than the disparity in army level power would normally teach you to do, right?
Exactly. I'm not going to tell you that Gene Slurkle is going to get a 50-50 win rate into AdMech.
Or
Hats off
just,
to
a
players.
50-50 win rate, John.
I think I could go. I think I could go 3-3 with Gene Slurkle. I don't want to flex here, but I feel like I could pull it off.
Well, fair.
All right, maybe. Awesome. Okay, I'm here. So something else I wanted to bring up, hopefully, so I don't disappear again. I recently saw you are using TTS as a tool to help coach. So how are you using that, and kind of what benefits are you seeing from doing that?
I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't used TTS in about 12 months.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No.
It's like I thought I saw that you were using it for like coaching.
I have before. I've used it once in the past 12 months, actually. What I do actually to help with, I have TTS as an option. Most people choose not to use it. What I usually do is, with our premium coaching clients, I'll set up a Zoom call with them, and I will have the camera be an overhead camera, top down over a 6x4 or the string table in our house. And so I'll have people on the phone, and I'll like work through them, and like if they want to talk about Tyranids, I will turn on the camera, turn on the lights in our stream room. I'll be able to hear them. They'll be able to hear me, and then they'll see my hands working. But I'll like put a Tyranid army down, and I'll like start talking about the concepts. Like, okay, if you're going to deploy Dima Karen, this is when you want to play it aggressive. This is when you would defensively. This is how you should move Hormigons to take advantage of that. I've done things like that on TTS before, but honestly, every single person I've talked to about that has said that they would rather see it on an actual table than on TTS. So I usually do that, and then sometimes people will play games on TTS, and they'll take, like, some of my clients, they'll take screenshots when they're playing, and then they'll call me afterwards and be like, hey, this is what the game looked like after deployment. This is what it looks like after turn 1, after turn 2, and I'll kind of talk through the game with them, analyze their game plan. I'll be like, okay, I think your game plan could have been improved by doing this. These are some small mistakes. This is where you could get more out of your units. We'll talk about things that way as well.
So I guess back to you. When did you first realize that, hey, I'm pretty good at this 40K thing?
I realized it about 6 different times. I was just wrong the first 5. Maybe I'm wrong this time. We're still working on that one. Trust me, as soon as I won an RTTA like in 8th grade, I was like, I'm really good at this. And then immediate smackdowns, were laid on me when, like, I think Jaws the World Wolf got released, and I started like losing half of my games. Just to Space Wolves, then I still had to play the non-Space Wolves. I don't know. I think like my biggest like moment of like, yeah, this is good was ATC 2019 when the Brohammer team I was on with Richard went undefeated 2nd place. That was the first time where I was like this is it. I'd gone 5-1 at the LVO before that, I think, which was I was quite happy with because that was my best showing at LVO. I had won GTs before that, but I would usually like win GTs local. Then like I went to LVO, when and would lose a game day 1, and then try to see how I could do from there. So I don't know. That ATC was like my real moment of like I think I'm actually there.
And so speaking of LVO, you've gone all the way at LVO. You've won, right? Or have you got pretty close to the second one there? Or?
I have
never
not
won
LVO.
Oh man, look at me being all terribly researched.
Yeah, I haven't won any of the big 3 yet.
You have made it to the 3rd day, right? For
I have.
LVO?
I got 3rd or 4th place at the last LVO.
So what is that weekend like for you from that perspective? Because I know many of us here sort of know kind of like LVO is a weekend. Yeah, you go, you play your 6 rounds of 40K, you have fun, you do sort of things, ignoring the fact that you have those 8 or 9 players who have like literally 10 rounds of 40K for some of them through this. So what does the weekend look like from your perspective on that?
I'm a little bit of a different, gamer. Everyone enjoys the hobby in their own way. I don't really like to go out much. I'm actually a bit of an introvert. I'm sober. So at LVO, I've gone 3 times. Usually I go play my games, get in like super late Thursday night, so I just go crash at a hotel. Play Friday, play Saturday. Saturday night, the years that I have not gone on to play on Sunday, Saturday night I'll go out to a restaurant on the Las Vegas Strip, go people watching in casinos, just walk around a little bit. enjoy a different city that I'm usually not in. But anytime I've got games the next day and I'm at like a big major, something I really care about, I usually spend the night before in my hotel room reading lists, doing homework. I've got all the codexes saved on my phone or on my laptop, so I'm doing homework on the next matchup, looking at who else is undefeated, who I might play. Being a giant nerd, just the whole time, like just straight consistent all the way through, no breaks.
And then, so there you go. If you too want to make it to day 3 in LVO, you just have to avoid the bright lights, the shiny refillable drinks.
Be a massive tryhard. Yeah, that's all you have to
do. Which, ironically, there's a lot of massive tryhards who like end up like not going to day 2. But anyway,
it's usually me. But I got a little lucky last time.
So what army, like, what is your I know Danny said at the start that you play a lot of Imperium armies. Like, what would your favorite 40k army be? That
my favorite army in Warhammer is probably Genestealer Cult. I started out with Tyranids. I've been playing for somehow like 13 years, over half my life at this point. I played Tyranids pure consecutive for like the first 7 years. Then I literally put $1,000 into Genestealer Cult the second they got an army, because Genestealer Cult was so cool. Because I always liked them. They had metal models that were $50 on eBay, and they didn't have rules, so why would I buy Genestealer Cult? So Tyranids and Genestealer Cults were like my first 2 armies of my favorites. I kind of split up into all of the Imperium, and now it's kind of like when Tyranids are good, I play Tyranids or Genestealer Cult, and when they're not like actually in a good spot, which is fairly common, unfortunately, I kind of cycle between Imperium. I play pretty much everything Imperium except AdMech, which is terrible right now. Terrible timing. I should just go ahead and suck it up and buy an AdMech army at this stage. Like everything except like Grey Knights and AdMech I play for Imperium. I don't really play Chaos much. I like to loudly declare that I don't play Eldar, but also when they're broken, I'll kind of sneak over for an event or two. And then like immediately sell them afterwards is usually what happens. Take a cold shower. I play almost everything Imperium. I've played a lot of Space Marines since that 8.5 Codex came out. Yep. Really enjoyed playing White Scars in both 8th and 9th edition, and then kind of had little forays into a bunch of other armies like Iron Hands, Fists, Death Watch, Ultramarines, all that stuff.
Now, you are known to be quite like a really good list builder, obviously, which comes with your winning. How does it feel when you look through BCP or you look through a tournament and you see like basically your lists like over and over and over again?
Over and over, but I've definitely seen it pop up, especially recently. Since I stream now, I think a lot more people actually see what I'm playing. It's really cool, and it's kind of flattering. And then also, sometimes like when I'm like I like secretly like go through the event and like look up how they did, and then like I'll laugh afterwards. It's like, ha ha ha! I went 5-0 and you went 2-3. Ha ha! You didn't understand the list. Do that evil.
It's like, you fool! It was all this stratagem.
It was all in the Invictors, you fool. No, it's really cool, honestly, and it's really awesome. And I've never gotten the mirror match yet. Like I've never played against someone who's just running my list, and like I have this secret fear that it's going to happen one time, and I'm just going to like lose the game somehow, and I'm just going to like, oh no, what am I doing with my life? Like I went to an event where 2 people were running the exact same list as me, and like they both like said like, yeah, I really liked your Ultramarine list. If I had lost to either of them, I don't know what I would have done.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. If you beat John Lennon in a mirror match, you'll absorb his power, Highlander style.
I might give them the headband. I don't even know. It's like
the quickening.
Yeah,
you'll go back to Florida. The locks will have been changed already. There's
gonna be an alligator waiting for me, just like
as is the tradition in Florida when things displease, as you leave an alligator on the doorstep. Of course, that is what you have to do there. But yeah, I think it's like really cool. Like when we were starting to see things like Drakari are kind of becoming an issue in the book. And then all of a sudden you come up with this kind of Ultramarine list. So kind of without kind of giving away too much of the goat here, how do you construct a list when you see like, okay, this is how things are going to be, and like this Drakari thing is going to be a problem?
Yeah. Usually whenever I write like a new list from scratch, I usually have one concept or like thing that I want to do in mind, and then I go ahead and build out and balance from that point. So like it's usually like 1,000 point core of like this X task has to happen, and then I take the other, the rest of the list and like make it actually play the mission, work against other things. So with Drukari, it kind of was a joke because I played a ton of games of Drukari when they came out, and that's why I played Drukari in Dallas because I got frustrated of losing to them. Where I think between me and Jack Harpster, we played into Nick's Drukari like 9 times before Dallas, and we went a clean 0-9. The closest game was my White Scars lost by about 18 points, and I hadn't lost with my White Scars in about 7 months. And I was the only Space Marine in the army that got within 20 points of Nick's Drukari in our practice games. And that really pissed me off, that's the big mad right there. So I was like, screw it, I'm playing Drukari. So I played Drukari at Dallas. And I came back and I'm like, all right, well, I can't do this again. This was too much. Like this is the power I would get addicted to. I can't be an elf player forever. So it was like, all right, the goal here is to get a 50% win rate into Drukari. So I'm like, okay, what if I make that 50% literally just going first? And so I just built an Ultramarine list with an Alpha Strike for the ages that every single gun was tailor built to kill T3 and T6 models. And then once I kind of accomplished that part, I started dialing it back, being like, all right, let's put some mission plan, let's put suppressors in, storms in, add some infantry, here are the characters. And then, I started building, all right, now how do I go second against Drukari and like have a playable game? Because if I win every time I go first and I don't auto lose if I go second, I now have a better than 50% win rate into Drukari. Okay, and that's the goal at this point because I had really low standards after losing 9 games in a row. So it was a spiral right there. And then the Ultimate list kind of took shape. I started like doing practice games in Drukari to make sure it kind of worked. And once I made sure it worked in Drukari, it's like, all right, let's actually play normal armies and see what happened. And it turned out it was like actually good. And I was like, okay, this works into chaos. Oh wow, this actually like is pretty decent into all these melee Marine armies that are still running around. Because at the time, Marines were just like Blood Angels and White Scars and Space Wolves and like maybe Dark Angel Terminators, but it kind of worked into all that. So it just became an army that I played at events, and I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And I really like that Ultramarines army. I probably will continue to take it to some events. Like I'm probably going to bring it with me to Charity Hammer, and I'll either play it at the tournament there or I'll play it on stream. But I really like the army, so I want to keep using it.
Sure, that makes sense.
Amazing. So another thing you guys do through the Art of War, through your streams, is you don't just kind of have games and things like that. You also have kind of hobby hangouts where you guys are just kind of talking, building things. How does it feel when the world reacts like you have some kind of secret CIA coded information based on your decision to build like a box of like guard?
Oh my goodness. So let me clarify here. We're not playtesters. We keep asking, by the way, and they just keep telling us no. Or actually, that's not true. They ignore us, and one time they told us no. Other than that, they ignore us. But it's kind of funny because so it's me, Richard, and Nick, and all 3 of us collectively own just about every army. And the ones that we were missing, we just kind of went and got. We have wonderful sponsors. We collectively had a lot of prize support just sitting in like I've got a couple different stores that I've played RTTs at where I just kind of have some store credit on the tab. So like whenever like I want to get an army, I can usually like make like 3 phone calls and get like a bunch of product shipped to me. So like we have way too much Warhammer, just to paint the picture. We are addicts and there's too much, but we have it. So it'll be a case where like before the Drukari Codex, we looked at our Drukari collections and we looked at, okay, what don't we have? And we're like, well, we opened up all the boxes, went through the garage full of boxes. We're like, okay, well, we have 7 Venoms. We have like 4 Raiders. Here's a box of Reaver jet bikes. We don't have any Hellions. And it's like, Hellions have been bad for a while. Maybe they'll be good. So we went and bought some Hellions. And then, of course, everyone's like, why is Art of War buying Hellions? And then Hellions were actually good. And we're like, oh, crap. Like we got lucky. And then this happened right before the last... so we also, the same thing with buggies, where we bought 3 boxes of Rocket Truck Squig buggies. And people were like, are they going to be good? And we're like, I don't know. All I know is that we have every other buggy times 3. This is the only buggy we don't own because it's the worst. So we bought 3 so that we now have all the buggies times 3. And then Space Wolf Dreadnoughts. This one was fun. Right before the points update. So there was a meme circulating through group chats and people like would forward it to me of like, what do they know? And it's like, it's like a picture of like us with like 3 Space Wolf Dreadnoughts right before the points changes came. Like our Space Wolf Dreadnoughts gonna be good, and they didn't change a point. I'm like, all right, we bought Dreadnoughts because we're like, hey, this would be a cool meme list. And then it turns out they're exactly the same as before, and we still haven't built them. They are still, I could go get them right now. They're still in the closet, shrink wrapped. They will not be built in the next 6 months. We just kind of bought them on impulse. So it's kind of funny,
GW could reach out to you and be like, hey guys, we're sitting on a whole bunch of grots. Could you just have a few boxes on your hobby stream? And then be like, oh no, okay, we're going to get in the grot meta.
Sometimes this happens. Like I put my heart and soul into a Vindicare Assassin right before their Psychic Awakening came out, and it is still so terrible. Yeah. It's still so bad. It happens.
On the plus side, though, brand new Vindicator coming from the Warhammer Plus subscription.
Oh yeah, he looks.
That's going to get me right there. That's how I'm spending my money. I want another Vindicare.
Hey, so
this one is going to roll 2 pluses.
Oh yeah, of course. But that's the problem with that guy, right? Like you can never. There's always a 1 in those 2 dice that you roll to hit and wound. Yeah, always.
Yep.
So speaking of the trap house, we got a question from a listener tonight, David Roth. He asks, "What's life like in the 40K trap house?"
There's not as much 40K as you'd expect. When we're not like prepping for a major, it's actually really hard to play a game other than the stream ones. And then the stream ones are weird because we try to be diverse with armies. So like right now, I want to only play my sisters because I really like the new sisters book. I've been painting it for a while, so I'm like, let's get some games in. And then it's like, you guys want to play sisters next week? They're like, John, you just played sisters this week, so next week you have to play a different army. I'm like, oh, I want to play. Like, do you guys want to help me practice sisters? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I have to like start calling people like, anyone want to play against sisters real quick? Like if there's not an event coming up, so Lone Star I'm going to try to get a couple practice games in for, but it's pretty fun. It's weird because like the 40K overflows into the house, but then we all kind of like to not have 40K in the house because we have friends who don't play 40K. Sure. And like they all know it. Like once you're our friend, you get exposed to 40K and you just kind of like give us side eyes whenever we start speaking Greek to each other. But we try to just sort it by rooms where we have like a garage and 3 rooms that are overflowing with 40K, and then we try to make like the TV room just like a normal room with like no Tau commanders hanging up on the wall, like no dice in the corners of the couch. Like we just try to make it a normal room. Just
like Snuggies and binging Netflix, things like that. That's what
I think there actually is like a Snuggie on my couch right
now. Oh man.
And of course I won't ask which member of Art of War's nickname that is, because that just seems rude at this point.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, you're saying you have like a hard time kind of getting in practice games because you guys have like a crazy stream schedule. You have like new content almost every day over there. Like, how frustrating is it for you sometimes when you do have a big event coming up that you want to go where you're like, okay, I don't want to throw AdMech into these guys. I just want to play my sisters right now.
The hard part is and there's some local players here and some friends, so we can usually get the reps in. But the hard part is like when you're going into an event, it could be that everyone wants to practice their army. So like if I'm going to the Lone Star Open, but Richard isn't. So I'm torn between Marines and Sisters. Like small chance I do AdMech because they're just so good. But like right now I want to play my Sisters. But if Richard were to practice with me, he would want to play his AdMech if he were going to Lone Star. So it'd be like, what if I want reps into something besides AdMech? And Richard's like, well, what if I want something besides reps into Sisters? I'm like, sure. Okay, fair. So it's not really frustrating just because you get plenty of games in still. And honestly, theory usually gets me through. I just try to get like 1 or 2 games in with every list before I go to an event. And the big thing is like before a major, I try to go to a GT with an army just to kind of get some play to random things. Because like I would never think about, whether or not I'm going to go second against 7 Armigers until that happens, because I could never get Nick or Richard to play 7 Armigers with me. And then Dallas, it's like round 2, I went second on Dawn of War against like 9 Armigers, and I just like lost my entire Raider army. And I'm like, oh boy, okay, we have to work for a living now. So it's, I don't know.
Progression, by the way, where I was going to say, I like that progression, by the way, where I would go to an RTT to practice for a GT, and you're just kind of like, big ball on it and going straight in for going to GTs to practice for the real events, the majors, right there. Which, again, makes total sense though, right? Because there has been some sort of talk that you guys have like a really great concentration of amazing players over at the Art of Warhouse, and that in itself forms this weird little diamond hard meta. Do you find that kind of changes like how games against other players come up? Where you're like, oh, okay, like this is like an entirely different place now.
Yeah, it does. It was it's really the thing is like that you need to not be in the try hard mentality round one is the thing. Where like ACO, like, I played against a really competent round one opponent, like actually had a very difficult game. But then sometimes round one, you play against a guy who's like at his first event and like he lives like, 2.4 miles away. So this is just the first GT went to. And you just play him, he doesn't know who you are, and you just, have a good time, be gentle. So it's funny because I'm so used to playing against the optimal stuff. Then there's some lists that like we will never play, but are still totally good enough to beat us, like knights. So what I kind of try to do to shake that up is if I'm ever not going to an event in the next couple weeks, I'll usually like start playing like not a troll army, but like something that's a little more fun. Like when Nick was going to an event that I wasn't going to with his Death Guard, he's like, "Hey, I want to get reps with my Death Guard," and I'm like, "Okay, sure." And I like looked at like my A game stuff. I'm like, you know what? I bet he can't beat knights. And I just went and beat him with like a pure knight army. And he's like, "What the heck are you doing?" I'm like you could play knights round one. Like, you don't know. like I could play knights round one. I'm like, and wouldn't that be embarrassing?
You're like, no, not like this. Practice differently.
Like LVO all over again.
LVO all over again. We mentioned that game, that LVO about every other day with Nick.
Okay. Sorry.
You got to keep him on his toes.
So you guys have mentioned it a few times here that you're like the aversion to knights that it seems to be. What is it about that army where you guys are like, I don't really want to play that?
I love it, but I actually really like knights. It was like my quarantine hobby project, so I actually like put a lot of time into it, and it's actually a decent looking army for once. If you've ever seen my armies, so for us, it's like we're always trying to go the distance, and we're always trying to like write the list that's going to go 6-0. And so we always try to like write the really consistent, safe lists that can hide behind terrain every turn and do all this crazy janky stuff. And then knights are just like power, where sometimes you go first with knights and you just clean steamroll someone for 100 points. And sometimes you go second with knights and you fail your first 5 or 6 invulns, and you just lose 2 knights turn one. And you're just like, that was literally just a game, and that's it. And none of us really want to lose a game where it's just like this thing happened. So we always try to like create these super safe lists that always have play. And usually that kind of takes us away from like specifically knights or like an army that's like just an alpha strike gun line, and that's all it does. So we usually, because what if we go second? Like Atlantic City, I just went second all 6 games with my Ultramarine go first win army, and it's like, okay, maybe this wasn't the best plan, but I still love them, so it's okay.
So you go into making armies with like a really clear idea of what you want them to do. What's an army that you loved in concept but was just god awful on the table?
Oh, I don't want to admit some of these things. Almost all of my answers here are going to be like guard based. There's this barbed Herodule list for Tyranids. And of course I got excited about it, and like I bought the barbed Herodules without playtesting it. Painted them up, like put them on the table, and realized that like my entire army was like move 6 inches, shoot, but also not if they have melta-guns. And I was like, this is so bad. I won a game with it, and like I won it only because I like got lucky, and I was like looking at my opponent, like realizing like, oh, he could just move and beat me, and it didn't happen. I was like, okay, this is probably not the future. So I just have 2 barbed Herodules on my shelf now. We'll see play in 2023. They're painted. Yeah, they're actually painted, because I paint all my stuff up before I play with it now because we stream. And so I'm like, wow, I spent money and effort on these, and it was a waste. And I'm really sad about it.
What's been a unit that you've had like the quickest turnaround time on because you've had to be like, okay, I need this for the stream game?
I mean, we've done a lot where if it's just one unit, I'll like bust it out in like a really good day. Quickest turnaround time, I think, was honestly all that Indominus stuff, where I think I painted like 2 Indominus boxes in like the Space Marine halves in about like 2 weeks. because like when Indominus came out, all of it was so good, and we're just like, well, I guess I need all of this, so just assembly lined the whole thing and just started cranking it out. And like I would just like I did like a game on Tuesday, like so like we got the box over the weekend, so like the Blade Guard veterans were all done by Tuesday, and then I had the Outriders painted by Thursday, and then the Eradicators were done the next week, and then the next by the next stream it was like all the Assault things were done. So just like the Indominus I went through really fast.
Yeah, and they're great models as well. I have to say, like that almost.
Yeah, like when that 9th edition hype was real, so it kept me going. And it was also kind of like peak COVID, so like I wasn't going outside anyway. So you just sit down and paint.
Speaking of 9th edition, how would you kind of rate the edition so far? We're about 2 years in now. What are your kind of thoughts on 9th edition, where we're at? Yep.
I think we're only 1 year in. I think
we're about 2 years in, are we?
No,
I think we're like 1 year in, like a year and a month.
My fact checking today is just tip top. Oh, amazing. That's why I kept it around. But a year into the edition, where are we at? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I really like 9th edition. We haven't seen like a full year of meta because of COVID, obviously. But I think 9th edition has the best core rulebook that we've had in the past 9 editions. I've been playing since 4th, so from 4th to 9th, I think 9th edition is the best core rules that we've ever had. I really was happy until Dark Elder and kind of AdMech to the same extent came out, where I think the codex balance is a little bit wonky. But we've had wonky balance in every edition at some point, so I think 9th edition is still my favorite edition of 40k that they've done so far. I really enjoyed 8th. I think that the Nova 2019 meta, I think was like one of the best states that the game has ever been. But 9th edition is close to that. I think we're literally like an AdMech FAQ away from this being like the best the game has ever been. So yeah. I'm really happy with 9th overall. I love playing it. I don't intend to stop anytime soon. And I'm excited for to see all the other codex cycle out, because I think once we hit that, everyone has a codex spot in 9th. I think we're going to be in a really, really good place, because the 9th edition core rules just feel better than anything else we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's a great time. Just a little bit of, like you said, that the codex to codex balance is kind of what we're looking for right now. Mm-hmm. Before we kind of move off here to our little game that we put together, and there will be a game this week. I'm so sorry for last week. I would ask you, what is one thing top players do? And what is one thing that holds other players back?
So I'll start with the second question here. One thing that holds other players back, I feel like a lot of people say out loud, hey, I want to win and do as well as I can. And then when it comes time to make decisions for that, they're like, well, no, not like that. And then they kind of like self-impose some rules, and then they lose games because of it. And that's totally fine. I think the biggest thing is just be honest with yourself with what you want, where if your goal is, I want to go win this GT I'm going to in a month, and you look at yourself and you're like, well, I don't want to buy any more Rangers. So I'm just going to play with the 20 I have. Honestly, I don't like, that 40k involves money to win, but also if you make a decision that directly leads to your army not as being as good or not playing as well, you just need to accept hey, I made this decision. That's totally fine. Money was tight this month, but keep your expectations in line with that, where some people are like, I don't want to play Drukhari because they're broken, so I'm going to play, my pure craft worlds instead. It's like, sure, just accept that playing pure craft worlds will probably win less games than playing pure Drukhari. And that kind of stuff goes, all throughout it. If you choose not to practice and then lose a game at a GT, there's probably a reason for that. That kind of mindset goes through all levels of playing 40k. That's one of the big ones I see with kind of the players who have a little ceiling above them that are struggling to break through. Is usually there's some kind of self-imposed limit where they don't practice ever. They only play at tournaments, and then they lose one game at a tournament to something they've never seen before. And they're like, well, I didn't know it did that. That's why I lost. It's like, well, what if you practiced? Or what if you went out and bought 20 more Skitarii Rangers or 100 more Skitarii Rangers? Why not just do 180 Skitarii Rangers? Screw it. For top players, it's not army chase, even though I was making the jokes about buying AdMech. For me, I think the thing I noticed with top players is that they will take the consistent plays almost every time. Where a lot of times, and I did this myself, a lot of my times, a couple years ago, I'd find myself about to do something. I get this gut feeling maybe I shouldn't risk this entire game on a 7-inch charge. And then I'm like, no, I'm feeling it. I'm going to make it. And then, of course, you roll a 6 and you reroll, and then it's a 2, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I just lost the entire game. I feel like a lot of the top players, they don't take those chances. They just across the board, like they just make the safe, consistent plays, and they know what the consistent plays are, and they have a game plan for it.
Amazing. Well, I feel personally attacked and inspired at the same time. So thank you for both of those. Danny, is there anything else you want to ask John here before we move on to beat Danny?
No, let's move on. I'm going to lose to John already. I looked up my pairing. I walked up to the table, and he's got me already.
Well, I mean, he's the only other player at the tournament, so, it's...
Well,
there we go.
All right. So last week on the Frontline Gaming community on Facebook, I put up a forum asking you guys to tell me what the best point-for-point unit is in 40K and what the worst point-for-point unit is for 40K. You guys said in your answers, and no, Peter, I'm not reading yours because Danny McDevitt is not a unit and he is not terrible.
Wait, hold on. I'm an absolute unit.
But John, as our guest at this point here, what we're going to do is I'm going to have each of you pick one side. So either the best point for point unit or the worst point for point unit. And then you're just going to have about 30 seconds to guess as many as you can. And whoever guesses the most is going to win. Nice, simple, easy. So John, would you like to take a guess at the best units for point or the worst unit point for point?
Oh boy. You know what? Let's spice things up a bit. Give Danny a fighting chance. I'm going to go with the worst unit.
Nice.
Okay. So you're going to have 30 seconds to guess as many as you can from what the Frontline Gaming community on Facebook thinks is the worst point for point unit in 40K. And if we are ready, we go.
All right. Pyrovore, Lictor, Striking Scorpion, Howling Banshee, Drop Pod. It's totally the Drop Pod. Custodes Land Raider, every other type of Land Raider. Space Marine Stalker, Space Marine Hunter, Space Marine Scouts, Tau Drones, Tau Pathfinders, Kroot, Vespid, Kroot Hounds, Krootox, Dark Eldar, Claude Fiend, Necron Warriors, Necron Tesseract Art, Necron Obelisk. What else is there in this game? Orcs, the whole Codex.
And time.
Yeah. Orcs, the whole Codex is on there.
So sadly it wasn't. You did get 3 for Land Raider. You got Land Raider. Raider did come up a lot.
Yeah, that it did.
Listing the entire Tau Codex, I did give you the Fire Warrior, which was put at kind of the worst unit. And then also Space Marine Scout.
Space Marine Scout.
What makes the Space Marine Scout so terrible in game?
I actually kind of like Space Marine Scouts. I just know that everyone else is mad that they went to Elites because it's like, why would I take Scouts when I can take literally anything else that's already OBSEC? And like when you look at Space Marine Elites, like there's 1,700 choices. Like Space Marines have more data sheets than it's so people are salty about Scouts, so I assume they'd be the worst. I like them because they can do the little, you move a Lame Speeder Storm 18 inches, you get the Scouts out 3, you move 6 inches, you perform an action, and all of a sudden you retrieve Docterius data 27 inches away from where you started. So that part's kind of cool, but I get it. That's not really...
it's not sexy.
Not sexy. It's like, hey, my unit is dying in a creative way. Cool.
But I got points.
Yeah, all right. If Danny can't get 3 of these,
I know.
Let's go, Danny.
We're going to be really disappointed. All right, Danny. So you're going to be picking the best point-for-point unit that the Frontline Gaming community on Facebook thought. So are you ready to go?
I guess.
All right.
Yes, I am.
You can't say Skitarii. No, I'm kidding. Go.
Okay. Skitarii. Let's see. Ooh,
man. I'm gonna ask
Danny,
you how to specify.
Danny McDevitt. That's a great unit. Let's see. No, seriously, like Incubi, we've got Succubi, we've got Drazar, we've got Witches, Cabalites, Raiders, Skitarii, Sicarans, so Ruststalkers and
Right, stop. I think my flaw with this game here, if I'm going to be real with you guys here, was not realizing that Danny could just list the Dark Elf.
I took the hard way.
But you did win with 5. You did 5.
Wow.
So that is super good. Most of those through Dark Eldar, who were very popular in that list, showing me that the salt is still strong for that particular book.
John, I'm very proud that you guessed the obelisk. That is like the first thing I would have guessed. I'm like, oh man, he's going the wrong way. He hit Space Marines. He really needs to hit Necrons. There's a bunch of units in there that are bad.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what it was called because I haven't played an obelisk in a hot minute.
That's fair because you've never seen one on the table before.
All right, John, before we sign off for the night, go ahead, plug your things, your many, many pies that you have fingers in, and also your podcasts.
Absolutely. So you can find me with basically everything related to the Art of War. Of course, that is our YouTube channel. We are live on YouTube at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, doing hobby streams and then games on alternating days. As well, we have the War Room where you can sign up to access our coaching games, the clinics and classes that we teach, as well as personal coaching. I'm also on the Art of War podcast. I'm one of the main hosts of the Art of War podcast along with Tim Pinney. And of course, if you do not want to give me your hard-earned money, I don't blame you. You can catch me on the Florida Man 40K podcast, which is completely free. And that's a podcast where me and several of my Floridian friends and totally not flamingos in a trench coat talk about 40K at all levels of the game. We talk about the hobby, the lore, just having fun, and more the community aspect of Warhammer.
Amazing. And yeah, I think the person on the most podcasts of all, Tom Pone. John, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for coming. And then I promise next week will be more fact checked, or maybe it won't. Who knows? There was some fun in me just getting everything wrong tonight. I like that. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us for another great episode of Grim After Dark. John, thank you for joining us. Danny, thank you for being here when I make you be here every week. And then until next time, we will see you next Tuesday.